Well, it's once again coming to that time of year where this is pretty much just like the whole Brexit queues at Dover, as we will probably see in a couple of months' time, the Brexit chaos caused at different types of airports. The whole, once again, sewage being dumped into rivers along beaches is yet becoming another seasonal story that is happening every single year like clockwork. And bear in mind, this did not really become a big story until 2021. 2021 was when it, or at least when it first got reported big, like big time that, oh, raw sewage is sort of being dumped. And then 2022, it got even bigger. And now you've got the 2023 cycle of this story now kicking off. But if you look back at the genesis of these stories, actually, there are a lot of local news organizations who are reporting about this raw sewage dumping as immediately as 2020, once we had left the EU. Now, why has this happened? Why all of a sudden are we getting all this? Well, it is because we have left the EU, because we have left all those EU organizations, those environmental organizations. And a big part of the whole Brexiteer Conservative plan was, we want to shrink the size of the government. We don't want this big bureaucratic nonsense. But this is why you have these big organizations, because it stops this kind of stuff from happening. Now we don't have the resources, the money put into these things, and these companies no longer have the financial disincentive not to do this. Guess what? We're not in the EU anymore. The EU's water safety doesn't come around checking anymore. Don't have to worry about that anymore. And once again, this is not only as we've said this before, this is not only why you need to have regulations, because it helps to stop this type of stuff, but also why you need those bodies, because they sort of act as the police force and to police those rules, and that they are being followed. At the moment, these organizations that we were all paying into as a big pot, which was a lot cheaper, these big organizations haven't been recreated, or they've been folded into different departments and then just gone, well, we need this extra money to be able to go and do these checks because we need to hire X amount of other people. And the government has turned around and gone, well, no, we're not going to hire these extra people. So, of course, what do you think happened? And this isn't just this. I have said before, I am quite shocked that there is a big meat scandal going on at the moment. I am shocked that hasn't got more airplay, but maybe it will soon. And that is another feature of Brexit, of the government not replacing these bodies that help to police these laws. So let's go find out more about what's going on, and probably the first of many of these such stories, which we will probably see throughout the rest of the summer. And why summer in particular? Well, of course, it's because people go out walking more. People notice these things more. And of course, well, it gets warmer, which of course means it increases the smell that these things put out. So people notice it more during the summer than they do any other type of the year. So that's why we will be getting these now seasonal stories rolling on, not only just the holidays, but things like this as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of more end up coming into rotation as we go along this merry way of these. So before we do go looking more into this, please do remember to have a look at the click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page. There's the one-off donation link where you can buy me a coffee. There is the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club down below as well. You can join as well, where you get all sorts of bells and whistles and whatnots as well. And of course, both the Patreon and the Pony Club members do get my weekly video that I make especially just for them. So let's crack on into this. And before we do, thank you to everyone who does support the channel that way. Even if you do just click the like and share button, like I say, that helps. But let's go cracking on into the independent story on this. So, raw sewage being dumped into Environmental Secretary Therese Coffey's own constituency. So this is literally happening in her backyard, so to say. So the Tories' failure to tackle the raw sewage dumping has now been laid bare by figures showing that Therese Coffey had almost 1,000 spills in her own constituencies last year alone. Ms. Coffey is one of 7 Conservatives who have run the department since 2015, including Liz Truss, Michael Gove, Andrea Leadsom, and of course George Eustice, whose constituencies saw more than 15,000 spills in total just in 2022. Her Suffolk coastal constituency was hit by over 982 raw sewage spills in the year, according to the analysis by the Liberal Democrats. The following, these also findings now are following calls for her to resign this week after figures that have showed there were more than 300,000 sewage spills around the UK in 2022. And the other question that should be asked, why has this just started happening? I would love to see someone look into this and actually start to report why this is happening, because this is all Brexit related. If you go back to the source and the origin of this is all Brexit related. It doesn't just start magically just happening. This is all Brexit related. They just haven't reached that conclusion yet. But trust me, somewhere out there, I think we'll start looking to the genesis of this sooner rather than later. So Miss Coffey was accused of complete abdication of duty after claiming that she could not end the scandal of raw sewage dumping overnight. However, the figures have now revealed a succession of Tory environmental ministers since 2015 have failed to get to grips with these issues, leading to their own constituencies being blighted by sewage dumping. They show that since Mr. Eustace, Crombourne and Redcliffe constituency saw over 11,000 raw sewage spills last year, he served as the environmental secretary under Boris Johnson between 2020 and 2022. Miss Leadsom, who ran the department between 2016 and 2017, who represents Northern Hampshire, her constituency was hit by 1,800 raw sewage spills in 2020. And her predecessor, Truss, had over 597 sewage spills in a southwest Norfolk constituency just last year. And then Mr. Gove, who's the environmental secretary from 2017 to 2019, had 70 spills in his Surrey Heath, where he's been the MP since 2005. So you can see this is all happening. This isn't, this is all recent. All these spills, all these numbers, all started in 2020. What also happened in 2020, guys? Come on, put the pieces together. Just put them together. Oh. So in total, just last year, the constituencies of at least 7 Tory environmental secretaries had over 15,000 raw sewage spills, with sewage being dumped for a total of over 100,000 hours. The Liberal Democrats environmental secretary spokesperson Tim Farron said this: successive Conservative environmental ministers have done nothing to tackle the scourge of filthy sewage being dumped into our rivers and beaches. Now their own local communities are paying the price for this rotten legacy. Conservative MPs are taking the British public for fools by trying to rehash the old announcements and get their announcements on wet wipes from years ago. It is laughable that 3 separate environmental secretaries have all promised the same thing and taken no action. The Conservative Party is facing a massive backlash amongst the rural and coastal communities who are furious about this sewage scandal. Mr. Eustace told The Independent on becoming the environmental secretary in 2020, saying, I took immediate action to try and prioritize the storm overflows in all what's pricing decision, to introduce the new requirements for water quality in the Environmental Act and try and place at least a £56 billion package of investment through the plan for the water of last July. On Tuesday, Rishi Sunak did set out a new clean water plan with a promise to try and bring in stronger regulation and try and toughen the enforcement for those who pollute the rivers, lakes and beaches. Ms. Coffey, who has said that companies could face unlimited penalties for dumping raw sewage, said that over £1.6 billion of investment to try and boost water quality would be brought forward. This plan includes a constitution on a ban of consultation on the ban of plastic wet wipes, and of course restrictions on polyfibrillous substances in textiles, cleaning products, paints, and varnishes. It came as it emerged that the water companies in England had dumped sewage onto England's blue flag beaches, deemed safe by the environmental friendly, by a staggering over 1,000 times just last year. Separate figures showed that the top 5 beaches facing the most sewage of dumping were Blackpool Sands, Medford Beach in Torquay in Devon, Beachland Head in Hayling Island in Hampshire, Sidmouth Tyne Beach down in Southam in Devon, Exeter Beach in Exmouth down in Devon. A current DEFRA spokesperson said, this government is the first to try and take such comprehensive action over on storm flows. Our new plan for the water sets out an increased investment for tougher enforcement and tighter regulations to try and tackle this issue. Again, it's not just the storm flows that they're trying to sort of blame it on. They're trying to say, oh, no, you don't understand. It's all this extra water we got. It's all the flooding. When you look at the realities of this, it's Brexit related. It's the fact that we have left these EU bodies, we have left these things, and these the sort of the policemen who normally, the regulatory enforcers who normally do this, they're not there anymore. Because, like I say, we all used to pay massively into the same pot, which basically means we're having these bodies and these enforcers was miles cheaper. Now that we're out of the EU, when the government has continuously said, we don't want to do this because, well, it costs too much extra money, it does all these, well, this is what ends up happening. And again, this is another reality of Brexit. So, they also did try to point to the push of accelerated investment from Anglican Water, with over £27 billion worth invested to try and tackling the storm flows in east of England. The spokesperson added, the Environmental Secretary has demanded an action plan on every storm flow on every company in England, prioritising these in the bathing waters. We are also consulting to try and give regulators more power to impose much tougher penalties for polluters who need going to court. And like I say, this is all Brexit related. They can try and spin it any way you want. Oh, it just... But why did all this... Why has all this suddenly started happening? Like I say, you saw all those numbers. All those numbers of that raw sewage being dumped is from last year. That's last year. This didn't materialize out of nowhere. This started because of Brexit. This started because we have left those European institutions which we all used to pay into, which was, again, far, far cheaper than us making and replacing these institutions, which people like Michael Gove said at the time, as well as Boris Johnson, oh, don't worry, we'll replace these bodies. Have they replaced these bodies? Have they given these bodies the funding they need? No, most of the time they've been folded into different governmental departments. So they do exist in that governmental department, but then they don't have the funding, the manpower, or what is necessary for them to go and do these things. So is it any wonder you're now going to get these stories? And these, like I say, this is one of the stories, just like the whole travel stories. Again, like I say, I can pretty much predict, rolling on into the summer, we're going to get a whole airports in crisis story, just as we did last year when travel pretty much restarted. I can guarantee you're probably going to get those stories again, except it's probably going to be even worse now. Especially probably the amount of people now traveling in sort of the coast COVID environment. So yeah, this is only going to get set worse, and unless there's one environmental secretary said, well, yeah, you've spent this amount of money, but actually in reality that's nothing. You need to be spending at least, I think, in the region of 200 billion rather than 27 billion. So they're way off, and it's the typical Tory attitude of, we know this is a crisis, we know this is happening, we're going to put some money in the hopes that it tries and sort of puts a sticking plaster over it, and maybe these stories go away. But in the reality is they just can't do it unless you actually spend money to do it. This problem's only going to get worse. And then you have to spend even more trying to clean up these places. So in the long run, spending the money now means that you save the vast amounts of money later on. It's not rocket science, but it's not what the Conservative attitude is to spending on these types of things. And we've seen what happens. We've seen this for years. Take the court system, the fact that it is so underfunded. The real Labour attack ad should have been Rishi Sunak has defunded the court system, which is denying you justice and letting violent offenders not face their day in court. Yeah, again, that's just such a much better attack ad than you could have gone with, but never mind. So, as always, thank you very much as always for watching, and of course, until next time, we'll see you all very soon.